Hey guys, Spud here, and for our first video of 2025, I wanted to give all of you guys out there a very heartfelt Happy New Year, and I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season with your friends and family. So for our first video of 2025, I figured we'd just do a kind of off-the-cuff quick video here, hopping into the Apache to take a look at some of the flight model adjustments that Eagle Dynamics has made. Now, I know this has been a bit of a contentious topic in the community in the past, and hopefully from all of your guys' point of view, Eagle Dynamics is moving in the right direction. Now, a little caveat here is I am a professional jet pilot, not a professional helicopter pilot. So take everything I say with a grain of salt when it comes to helicopters, but I figured my opinion would be valid because at this point, I think I'm pretty well versed at flying the Apache here in DCS, and it's by far my favorite helicopter in DCS. Also, right around us, we've got a couple of the new models that came with the latest update, including some new SA-10 Grumble components over there to take a look at as we kind of buzz our way around Erbil on the new Iraq map. So let's head in the cockpit and get started, guys. Okay, so we have all of the new options for the warnings for VRS enabled in the special options here. So hopefully that will give us a good idea of what's going on. Some of those warnings will also come up on the controls indicator, not just audio warnings, so we'll bring those up as well. We've got a bit of a hot morning here in Erbil in northern Iraq, and we've got a very heavy loadout on our Apache today, so hopefully we can kind of force ourselves into VRS. One of the things I have noticed before this update is it was getting harder to actually get your Apache into VRS. And I don't know if that's because there were flight model adjustments or if I'm just getting better at flying helicopters in general in DCS. One of the things that I really recommend if you're struggling with always getting into a VRS state and just falling out of the sky and crashing is to always just slow yourself down. Don't maneuver too harshly while flying helicopters in DCS. Maneuver as if you were actually feeling what's going on in the helicopter. You wouldn't be just ripping around the stick and the collective and the pedals in a real helicopter. You really got to slow it down, be slow, methodical, and smooth in a helicopter, compared to, say, a fly-by-wire jet like the Hornet, where you kind of rip things around without having to worry too much. So with that, let's go ahead and take on off. You can see the new model for the B1 over there. A little bit of a bug with the landing gear. That's kind of funny. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the SA-10 Grumble components off of our 12 o'clock here. Big thing here is always just be nice and smooth, nice and easy pulling up on that collective, and just give the helicopter whatever she needs on the pedals, the cyclic, just to keep her nice and stable. There we go, nose is starting coming off to the right a little bit there. Yeah, I can definitely tell we're heavy, that's for sure. But that's what we want for today. Still a little bit in ground effect. Start to lower the nose a little bit. We'll trim her out. And we'll kind of just scooch our way nice and slow over to our new Grumble components and take a look at those guys. So I do have a timer on here, guys, so that way I don't ramble on forever and ever, as I usually tend to do. And at this point, I kind of think that's my brand, is rambling on about things. Whoop, starting to descend a little bit, be a little careful there. Being this close to clamshell radars and such in an Apache really shows just how tall these radars are, which of course obviously helps with targeting things over the horizon. New tell there, big bird radars, clamshells, command vehicles, pretty cool. Although I do wish that all the ground vehicles in DCS came with a desert camo scheme, even just like a flat sand tan by default. Okay, let's see if we can get her into some aerodynamic trim. definitely not wanting to. Probably because we're pulling so much torque with our heavy loadout. And we'll take a look at the new B-52 and S3 models real quick. Those are looking pretty good. And I know a lot of you guys in my last video where I was flying the Apache were screaming in the comments about me being out of aerodynamic trim. But I will say that I tend to like to fly nose to tail for the most part, especially when I'm in combat. But we'll try and get her into an aerodynamic trim for you guys here, make things look a little better for you. So far, things feel really smooth. The helicopter doesn't feel nearly as touchy as it did before, which I think is really good. And I think it's that touchiness that was giving people a lot of issues flying this helicopter. So let's see if we can bring ourselves up to a higher altitude here and see if we can get ourselves into a little bit of a VRS situation. See if we can get that audio warning. So far, not really. I'm pulling a ton of torque. Probably going to explode the engines at some point here. And I'm settling.
Rotor RPM low.
Yep, there it is.
Rotor RPM low.
But I didn't see
Rotor RPM low.
much in the way
Rotor
of
RPM low.
a warning. But I definitely didn't have enough power to maintain altitude there with this very heavy loadout configuration and being at a sort of high altitude here at Herbal on a pretty darn warm day. And like I said before, I've been finding it harder and harder to actually get into a VRS state in the Apache. And this is even before this latest flight model change. So yep, so there we go, running out of power and we're settling. But it doesn't really feel like we're in VRS. So we'll dip the nose here and get some forward momentum going a bit, so that way we don't settle right into the ground. But it really doesn't feel like my nose is just bobbing and bobbling all over the place in terms of my pitch, roll, and yaw control anymore. And that was definitely something that was shown off in the changelog recently. Just keep on flying out towards Herbal here, or downtown Herbal, I should say. Really nice that ED has all of the maps set up and laid out for the northern portion of Iraq in the Apache already. That's pretty awesome to have. We'll try and pull up the altitude a little bit more. We've got a few more minutes here. See if we can really try to get us into a bad VRS state. So we're going to climb up, get pretty high over the city here, and see what we can do. Whoop, running into a little bit of a rain shower there. Just a little summer rain shower here in northern Iraq. Things are definitely a lot smoother with the helicopter now. Like, I feel like I'm nowhere near a state where I'm just trying to fight for control of the helicopter in pitch, roll, and yaw anymore. And I can feel like I can be a little bit more violent on the controls now without getting myself out of control, if that makes any sense. So let's try and get into a hover here. Let's see if we can get ourselves into VRS.
Rotor RPM low. Rotor RPM low. Rotor RPM low.
Come on, helicopter. Do the thing.
Rotor RPM low. Rotor RPM low.
Okay, there we go.
Rotor RPM low.
We're settling.
Rotor RPM low.
Torque is way
Rotor
too high.
RPM
I know
low.
I'm flying
Rotor
completely
RPM low.
unrealistically here, guys, but the idea is here to try to get some sort of a indication or a warning of VRS. But she just does not want to do it. And now I'm even flying backwards. Let's see if we can lower the nose a little bit. Nope. Okay. Very interesting. Okay, so let's now bring her back down to a lower altitude again. And we'll try the different attitude hold modes before we wrap up the video for you guys. Still getting a bit of stuttering here on the Iraq map, and I'm not sure if that's a me thing or a map thing. I feel like I've been getting some stuttering in DCS altogether lately, but so it could very well be a me thing. Alright, let's see if we can get her slowed down at a lower altitude over the old city in the center of Erbil here. Da, da, da. Nice and slow. So we got a pretty darn high descent rate. It's kind of amazing how much easier the helicopter is to fly now. It's a lot smoother. And I feel like folks who are new to the helicopter or have been frustrated by the flight model in the past may want to try and give it another shot, because it's definitely feeling a lot easier and a lot better at this point. So let's see if we can kind of get ourselves into a hover here. Now I know in real life you probably wouldn't be hovering with such a ridiculously heavy loadout in the Apache in real life here, but we'll see what we can do. We'll try our best. Yeah, and as we get to the extremes of the flight model here, trying to hover with a very heavy loadout, yeah, she just won't do it here.
Rotor RPM low.
We still get that kind of...
Rotor RPM low.
Yep, now we're settling.
Rotor RPM low.
There it is.
Rotor RPM low.
And
Rotor RPM
can we save it?
Oh, no. Rotor RPM low.
Boom.
Rotor RPM high. Rotor RPM low.
And that's completely to be expected, guys, because we had such a heavy loadout on a very hot day in a relatively high location, not super high. Erbil's elevation is roughly about 1,600 feet MSL. That's completely expected that we're just going to run out of power and settle like that. But it's not nearly as easy to get into as it previously was, and it's much more recoverable because the Apache's not bobbling left, right, up, down, and pitch and yaw, and sometimes roll. The helicopter feels much easier to recover out of VRS. So if you feel yourself get out of VRS, don't do what I just did, where I tried to purposefully crash myself. Lower the nose, get some forward velocity to get out of that dirty air you're pushing down on yourself, and get some more lift off of the main rotors, and that way you can get yourself out of that state. And it's much easier to do now, as we saw when we were up higher there, because we don't have that up, down, left, right bobbling that we kind of felt before this flight model update. So let's jump into another, like, more light Apache, and then we'll try out some hovering a little bit here and see how that feels. Alright guys, we're now in a much lighter Apache, so let's take off and see how the flight model feels while we have a very light loadout on the aircraft and roughly about 40% of fuel. So back in the office here, we are going to pull up on the collective and take on off. With a lighter loadout, I feel a little bit more comfortable just kind of ripping the helicopter off the ground rather than necessarily being nice and slow and smooth when I have a very heavy helicopter.
4 o'clock, searching.
So that feels pretty darn good. Obviously, we've got some rain here smearing our windshield.
SA-10, 5 o'clock, searching.
And honestly, wow, it makes these tweaks and changes make a big difference for me in this helicopter. It feels more like the helicopter should fly, or at least what I feel like it should fly. We get into kind of a nose-tail trim situation here to piss everybody off in the comment section. And we'll kind of go for a bit of a J-turn here to slow ourselves down. And normally kind of doing a J-turn there to really slow down quickly and get the helicopter closer to a hover as fast as possible would cause a lot of that yaw and pitch bobbling that we talked about previously. And now that seems to be more or less eliminated for the most part, which is really, really nice. And using the center position trimmer options is really great as well, because now it doesn't feel like if I let go of the controls to activate that center position trimmer, for those of us who have springs in our pedals and sticks, it doesn't feel like the helicopter is going to whack itself left and right in yaw anymore, or up and down in pitch anymore, which is really, really nice. So let's try and get ourselves into an actual hover now that we're nice and light. And we'll try and get out of a rain squall here, so that way you guys can actually see the beautiful terrain of Erbil around us. And yes, I know I'm not flying all that realistically, but we're just doing some flight model testing here. There we go, that's pretty darn close to a hover. Bring up the collective just a hair so we're no longer settling. We'll go ahead and trim her out. And we'll throw the hold on. Whoop, that was a little bit extreme. Let's see what she does here. Settling into the hold very nicely. Try and go neutral on all my controls. And wow. So I think that I kind of bobbled the getting into the hold there a little bit because I had a little bit of back pressure on my stick accidentally, and that's why the helicopter kind of like sprung itself back when I turned altitude and hold and airspeed hold on, and now the helicopter is just hovering very, very, very nicely. Whereas I feel like the helicopter would do a lot of twitching around and a lot more of a violent entry into a hover hold here. So it's definitely a heck of a lot better. The helicopter does feel a little bit more like it's on rails at this point, but for a lot of folks, I think that that is going to make things feel a lot better and make the helicopter a lot easier to fly. So like I said a few seconds ago, if you are new to the Apache, this is a great time to get in and start flying the Apache. And if you were flying the Apache and were getting frustrated with her and just did not really want to fly her again because you just couldn't figure it out, I highly recommend you come back and give the Apache a second try here, because I think Eagle Dynamics has really kind of nailed the flight model on this update here. And then, okay, so turning off the hold modes doesn't lead to a more or less violent departure from the hold. I just turn them off with 2 buttons on my HOTAS here, and then just very gently and slowly, smoothly got on the controls, and we're good to rock and roll. That's fantastic. It's a much, much better feeling flying helicopter than it was prior to this update. So thanks for watching, guys, and please leave a like and a subscribe and enjoy this beautiful game. Like I said, Happy New Year's out there. I hope you all have a wonderful 2025, and we're going to have a lot of great things coming to the channel this year, and some big changes coming up in the next few weeks. So stay tuned, and make sure you bring a like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye-bye.